Hi everyone, Jim here. Welcome to How to Draw Dynamic Female Poses, Sketching the Figure, Part 2. I know, that's a mouthful. In this video, I'm going to draw our swinging girl character, and I'm going to give you my thoughts and tips and tricks while I draw. Now this video is a continuation of my previous video, How to Draw Dynamic Female Poses, Layout and Mannequin Practice, Part 1. So in our last video, I showed you the comic book cover that I was using for my reference, and then we worked on basic posing, anatomy placement, and proportions using some simple mannequins and practice sheets to help us start drawing and posing our character. By the way, those reference sheets are available for free down in the description. Now I think it's really important to find things that motivate you to draw. Instead of dreading anatomy practice or random poses, try to find a drawing or a character in a pose that you think is cool or fun, and then copy it, but do it in your own way. You know, you can add new expressions, you can add new features, hairstyles, add in some accessories. You could even repose an arm or a leg and draw in whatever anatomy you want or know how to do. So there's lots of ways to make the drawing your own. And if you do want to just copy the drawing as is, well, that's fine too. Okay, so grab your pencil and let's get to the drawing. So the first thing I'm doing is posing the character using the basic mannequins that we have. And this is a simple way to pose the character and make sure everything fits on the page. I hate it when I forget to do this and find out too late that I drew the character too close to the side of the page, and then I can't fit an arm or a leg, and something gets cut off. By the way, I'm always just looking for basic shapes, and then I'll refine these shapes later. So keep an eye out for any shapes that you see and use them. Another little tip that I'll use a lot of times when I'm just laying out my pose or whatever is, instead of drawing the complete fingers or hands or whatever, is I'll just draw 5 basic sticks for the fingers pointing in the direction I want, and get them detailed later on. I just like to, when I'm posing things, get everything in place, and sometimes I'll worry about details and a lot of times I won't. So if that helps you, just place the fingers using basic sticks and then go back and do all your refining later on. Also, it's important to draw lightly so you can erase easily. You draw this mannequin out, not so it's going to be there in the end, but just so it helps you to place things on an empty page and get everything to fit properly. When I'm sketching, I'll use a lot of triangles for things like the hips, and then I also like to use triangles for things like the feet, sometimes the traps and the collarbones. So after a while you'll get your own system of laying out your figures. You can see here I'm kind of doing a triangle shape for the foot there. And now I'm just fleshing out the rib cage. And the rib cage goes down really close to your pelvic bone. If you feel the top of your hips, the pelvic bone, the space between the top of your hips and your ribs is not very big. It might only be 3 or 4 inches. If that far, it might only be a couple of inches. So don't leave a lot of space between the top of the hip bones and the between the top of the hip bones and the rib cage. Another good thing that'll help you too is if you take a look at how the backbone is actually shaped. You could see that when I drew in the backbone, I didn't draw it straight, I draw it very curved. And maybe I'll dig up a picture of a backbone so you can see the shape of it from the side. Okay, so here are some drawings that I did back in 2017. I was taking a course in Toronto, and we learned how to build the chest cavity and attach the backbone and give it the basic shape that it has. So that's kind of the reference that I've always got in my mind when I'm drawing out or thinking of the spine and the back. So there's really no perfect place to stop and insert this footage that I want to show you, but I want to show you the shape that I'm thinking of when I am drawing the chest muscles and the ab muscles. So I'm going to stop it now, and you're going to see what I'm thinking of. Okay, so in this part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show how I'm thinking of the abs in the drawing that we're doing. Okay, so it's basically the same thing. We know the pecs are going to insert right there underneath the deltoids. There's the shoulders, the deltoids. And then the pecs are going to come down here in that little wing there. So the main pecs are here, like this, going underneath the arm on the other side, follows the collarbone, and there's a little gap there between the deltoid here and the pec muscles. There's the pit of the neck, goes across the collarbone, goes underneath and attaches underneath the deltoid, the shoulder right there. And so then on this side here, 2, 4, 6, so there's our little winglet here, like that. So that's the 2-pack. And then we can just basically, and there's that little extra bit of chest muscle there. So then basically we can just go down here and follow the abs right down here, like that. Here's the 4-pack. The 4-pack's usually a little longer than the 2-pack. So there's 4, there's 6-pack, and we know there's the belly button right there. And there where your hip bone is, that's where the 8-pack is going to be. And then down here to the bottom of the legs is the 10-pack right there. So let's get rid of the sketch. There it is. And if we want to simplify it even more, okay, so making this really simple, we can just go like this. Whoops. Go here like that. Go down to the arm. And then go right down here. And let's get rid of the other layer there. So that's a pretty simple shape. Oop, I got that huge eraser. There we go. And if I get rid of the sketch, that's what you have. So that's what I'm thinking of when I'm drawing, is I'm just looking for simple shapes. And then if I already know the shape, well then as you're drawing you can make it a little more advanced and less geometric. You can make it more, what's the word? Realistic, lifelike, human. There's a word that I can't think of right now, so it doesn't matter. This is the shape that I think about when I'm drawing in all the details. All right, there you go. Another thing about drawing muscles and everything is that they don't always line up with each other side to side, and like your bicep isn't exactly in line with your tricep and things like that. So if they did, your body would fall over and never stand up. Muscles always overlap each other, especially at the joints. That's what keeps, you know, your joints solid and movable. You got to think muscles are more like a braided rope wrapping around each other for support and that push-pull ability that, you know, we have as humans. So here I'm just, you know, starting to do a little more detailing, getting in the shoulders and the deltoid muscles here. Still sketching pretty light though, getting in the chest muscles and attaching them to the arms, and now the collarbones. And with a slender person, you don't have to, you know, put in a lot of detailed anatomy. I mean, you can, but unless it's a big strong guy, you probably won't want to put in too much arm anatomy. Just enough to let the biceps show and maybe some of the you know, extensors and things like that. Now here I'm starting to outline the fingers You'll recall I said I put them in place using just, single lines. But that's usually enough, and then I can go back in and get the fingers, all fleshed out and things like that. So now I'm getting onto the legs. I always like to make a little bit of some kind of angle change for the knee. Otherwise it can get pretty round and kind of cartoony looking. So I always kind of make sure I do something to indicate the kneecap. And here I'm just putting in a few lines for the adductor muscles. Though in the original comic book cover that I used for reference, they pretty much had blacked out a lot of the costume, so there wasn't a lot of need for detailed anatomy. However, my goal in this was to put in a lot of anatomy just as practice more than anything, and fun on a cool looking pose. Feet are always a little bit tricky, but I just try to keep, some basic shapes in mind and have reference in front of me if I need it. So that's how I solve feet. Right now I haven't made them a priority as far as my anatomy learning goes, but eventually I'll get down to, getting more details in there. Now here, what I'm doing is I'm just doing some basic measurements because I just want to make sure everything's kind of in proportion properly. And you can see I use the rib cage. That's 1/3 of the torso, and then down to the legs where they join together is another third, and then the head and the neck is another third. And since the face on this character is in a so-called 3/4 view position, I'm always thinking about what I call the D face shape that I use. And I'll be doing a whole series on 3/4 faces, or what I call angled view faces. Now, I originally noticed this D shape while watching an episode of Castle, the writer Gone Detective show. Anyway, I just noticed while watching TV that a lot of faces from a distance, especially the way they're shadowed on TV, form the letter D or a backwards D. So that's a really useful thing. So I'll be doing a whole series on that, and you'll see how I use that D shape in particular. The other thing that I'm always keeping in mind when I'm doing faces is my 3-area face system. And if you haven't seen any of my videos on how to draw a perfect face every time, I strongly suggest you look them up, because using that 3-area system works perfect at any size of drawing, whether it's a medium-sized drawing or a close-up portrait. I'm just always relying on that chin to nose, nose to eyebrow, eyebrow to hairline system. So yeah, look up any of my how to draw a perfect face videos and face proportions, and you'll be able to lay out your faces very quickly and with confidence. Now I'm back to some arm anatomy here. And the armpit is a really, if you want to get arms and your chest looking right, the armpit anatomy is really important to understand how the muscles overlap. Your bicep is under your deltoid, and then you got the brachii in there, the coracobrachialis, and then how the lats come in, and then how the teres major comes in from the shoulder blade. So all those things, just little details, but you can kind of tell the artists who have their anatomy down versus the ones who don't. Everything just looks right, and a lot of times you won't notice it because it does look right. And but anyway, the armpit anatomy was something I really focused on, and it's really paid big dividends in drawing and posing characters. Now hair, there's so many ways to do hairs, but right now for me when I'm doing poses and things like this, I just like to draw in big shapes, and I don't worry too much about the details because this is not a refined drawing. It's just a bit of a pose and anatomy study. And I'm just making sure my legs are equal length. And I kind of realized that this her left leg wasn't really well, what I realized, it was just a slightly too big and slightly too long, so I had to reshape it. Do a little bit of drawing surgery, that's all. Every artist has to do it. I think I mentioned before, but that I watched Jim Lee do a Superman cover, and he erased Superman's face like a dozen times, and that was really inspiring in the sense that I realized I don't have to try and be perfect while I'm online drawing, because if one of the best artists in the world has to redraw things a few times, well, I can certainly not feel bad for having to redo things once in a while. Yeah, there's a lot to learn when you're drawing the human body. There's just so much anatomy and so many details that you can put in. You probably should just pick one area and get it down at a time. So a while back I was working on arms a lot, and I did my arm videos, and there's a couple of drawings from that. And then a while back I did some hand videos, and you can never do enough hands. I mean, you can, but it takes a while to get a lot of positions down and things like that. So, just choose one area at a time and focus on it, and then, use reference for everything else that you're doing. And over time, you start memorizing things. You memorize things that are important to you is what I find. So. Hey everyone, Jim here. Thanks a lot for watching the video, and if you haven't already, please give a like and take the time to subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. And don't be shy and give me a comment, any thoughts you're having or videos you'd like to see. I'd really appreciate it. And once you've got your layout done, well, then you can start coming in with a little more confident lines, darken things up that you feel confident about, but not too dark, in case you want to go back in and change something later on, which I think happens to everybody. You can also see here for the inside of the legs, the adductors and everything, that I grabbed my reference sheets again, just to make sure I'm getting the muscles in the right place. And whenever I'm drawing, unless I'm doing a finished drawing, I like to use that time to help me memorize more anatomy. So I've often got my reference books out and using it to memorize the hundreds of muscles in the human body. And by knowing most of them, or a lot of them, I can pick and choose what lines that I want to lay down in whatever specific drawing that I'm doing. I mentioned in another video that it's never a bad time to start building a visual library for yourself, whether you're a comic collector like me, or later on I started getting anatomy books and looking at them. And also I bought Arnold Schwarzenegger's bodybuilding book way back when, and my son ended up using it, and it really helped him to get into college and things like that. So just start building that library and learning, as you go along. but I would recommend you start sooner than later. Just get stuff that you like, you know, whether it's whether you're a dancer or a gymnast or whatever. Just get books and build that library of things that are of interest to you. It'll really pay off. And now that I'm getting on with the drawing here now, I'm starting to, you know, darken up the lines here that I'm, you know, confident and happy with. And, well, but still erasable. So that's important too. And yeah, just getting in more details and tightening up the drawing. And cleaning up things that I don't like, or, you know, just lines that are left over. And putting in whatever anatomy, you know, you want to put in on top of your base drawing. Do some simple shading, things like that. Sometimes you can over tinker, but I think with this one, you know, I got the right balance of how much to continue details and shading and stuff like that. Here I'm putting in serratus and the oblique muscles here, and obviously you don't have to do that unless your character is really ripped. You're never going to see those muscles, but I like to put them in because, like I said, it's memory work, and you know, on those occasions I do want them in, you know, I've practiced them and everything. Yeah, and probably next week I'm going to release the third part of this little series here, where I color the character. You've seen little glimpses of it in some of the shots I've given you, and so yeah, I'm going to go through how I color this character. So I'm looking forward to making that video, and I hope you're looking forward to seeing it. Yeah, so here I decided that the arm was a bit too long, and you know what, I just decided to redraw the whole hand. So don't be afraid to do stuff like that. I used to hate it when I'd have to redraw stuff and I'd leave stuff in that, you know, years later I'm like, okay, I should have taken the time to fix that at the time. And I constantly go through my sketchbooks and find drawings and fix them and stuff like that. So at least I won't have to fix this hand later on when I look at it. So I pretty much have everything how I want it, except I took a look at the hair and decided I wasn't quite happy with the shapes, so I thought I'd go in and redraw them and see how it turned out. And I'm glad I did, because I ended up liking the new hair shapes a lot better. Okay guys, so that pretty much wraps it up. Thanks a lot for watching, and until the next video drops.